Look at these hands. They are map makers of time. The veins are like rivers, the spots like islands on a chart of a world that has spun around the sun 78 times. I am 78 years old, and if we were to meet at a dinner party or in the queue at the grocery store, you would look at me and see a sweet old lady. You would see the grandmother who bakes cookies, the widow who tends to her roses, the woman who smiles softly and never raises her voice. You would see a woman who is content, but you would be looking at a costume. I have a secret to tell you, one that sits heavy in my chest like an old unopened letter. For nearly 7 decades, I did not exist. I was a fiction. I was a carefully curated collection of everyone else's needs, desires, and expectations. I was a ghost haunting my own body. We are told that wisdom comes with age, that it arrives gracefully like the evening tide. But that is not true. Sometimes wisdom arrives like a hurricane. It tears the roof off your house and forces you to look at the sky you've been hiding from. I want to tell you about the tragedy of being a good woman. Not the kind of tragedy you read about in books with wars and star-crossed lovers. I'm talking about the quiet tragedy. The tragedy of a voice that whispers yes when every cell in your body is screaming no. The tragedy of shrinking yourself so small that you fit into the pockets of the people you love, until one day you have forgotten how to take up space. It didn't start when I got married. It started much earlier. It starts when we are little girls. I remember my father telling me once, "Eleanor, be like water, fit the glass." He meant it as a compliment. He wanted me to be adaptable. But what I heard was, don't have a shape of your own. I learned very quickly that affection was a currency, and the price of admission was compliance. I learned that if I was quiet, I was good. If I was helpful, I was worthy. If I sacrificed what I wanted for my brother or my parents or my teachers, I was noble. I became like a stone in a river. You know the kind, perfectly smooth, round, pleasing to hold. But do you know how a stone gets that way? It gets that way by being battered, by grinding against other rocks, over and over, until every sharp edge, every unique angle, every piece of jagged individuality is worn down. I spent my youth sanding down my edges. I wanted to be an artist. I can still smell the turpentine and the oil paints if I close my eyes tight enough. I wanted to move to Italy and paint the light falling on old cathedrals. But my mother said, "That's a lonely life, Ellie. A woman is made for family. A woman is made to nurture." So I put down the brush. I picked up the embroidery needle. I stopped creating, and I started mending. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was building a foundation. I didn't realize I was digging a grave for my own spirit. I met my husband, Robert, when I was 23. He was a good man. I want to be clear about that. He wasn't a villain. He didn't lock me in a tower. But he fell in love with the reflection I showed him. He fell in love with the smooth stone, not the jagged rock. We built a life, or rather, he drew the blueprints and I laid the bricks. For 40 years, I was the chief architect of comfort. My job was to ensure that there was no friction in his life or in the lives of our 3 children. I was the oil in the machine. I remember the dinner parties. Oh God, the dinner parties. I would spend 3 days cooking, roasting the perfect lamb, polishing the silver until my knuckles ached, arranging the flowers. I hated lamb. I hated the smell of it, but Robert loved it, so I cooked it. I would sit at the head of the table, smiling until my jaw locked, laughing at jokes I didn't find funny, nodding at political opinions that made my stomach turn. I was performing. I was playing the role of the sublime hostess, and at the end of the night, when the guests left and the compliments were poured out, "Oh, Eleanor, you are effortless," I would go to the bathroom, lock the door, and stare at the stranger in the mirror. I was exhausted, not a physical tiredness that sleep could fix. It was a soul-deep exhaustion. It was the exhaustion of holding up the sky for everyone else while wondering why you are suffocating. My children, I loved them with a ferocity that scared me, but I made the mistake so many of us make. I made them my identity. I poured myself into them like water into 3 separate cups, leaving my own vessel completely dry. I thought that was love. I thought martyrdom was the highest form of affection. I never said, "I'm tired." I never said, "I want to go to a museum alone." I never said, "I don't want to cook tonight," because good wives don't say those things. Good wives don't have needs. They only have supplies. Robert passed away 7 years ago. The grief was real, but it was complicated, because beneath the sorrow, there was something else, something terrifying. Silence. The house was suddenly quiet. No one needed me to find their socks. No one needed dinner on the table at 6 sharp. No one needed their ego stroked or their mood managed. For the first year, I panicked. I didn't know who I was without a task. I was a servant without a master. I walked around this house cleaning clean windows and dusting dustless shelves. I was waiting for permission to exist, but there was no one left to give it to me. Then came the day that changed everything. It wasn't a thunderclap. It was a Tuesday, a rainy, gray Tuesday. I was in the attic sorting through boxes to send to my daughter when I found it, a dusty, leather-bound book, my old sketchbook from 1965, the one I had hidden away before the wedding. I opened it. The pages were yellowed, brittle, but the drawings, charcoal sketches of faces, unfinished landscapes, bold, messy splashes of ink, they were wild. They were imperfect. They were mine. I sat on the floor of that dusty attic, and I tried to remember the girl who drew them. And I realized I couldn't remember her favorite color. I couldn't remember what food she actually liked, not what was easy to cook, but what she craved. I couldn't remember the last time she did something simply because it brought her joy, with no utility, no service to others. I realized that I had spent my entire life tending to everyone else's garden, while my own was paved over with concrete. I cried. I didn't cry for Robert. I cried for Eleanor. I mourned her. I mourned the thousands of no's I had swallowed. I mourned the books I didn't write, the places I didn't go, the arguments I didn't have, because I wanted to keep the peace. I realized that keeping the peace had cost me my life. That afternoon, I did something radical. It sounds silly to you, perhaps, but for me, it was a revolution. My daughter called. She needed me to watch the grandchildren for the weekend. It was expected. It was the routine. Grandma is always available. I held the phone. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The old reflex kicked in. The word yes was forming on my lips, ready to jump out before I could stop it. But I looked at the sketchbook lying on the floor. I took a breath, and I said no. There was silence on the other end. "What?" she asked. "I can't," I said. "I have plans." I didn't have plans. My only plan was to stare at the wall, but that was my plan. "What plans?" she asked, confused, almost offended. "I'm going to buy paint," I said, and I hung up. The guilt that washed over me was nauseating. I felt physically ill. I felt selfish. I felt like a traitor. The programming was so deep, you see. We are taught that self-preservation is selfishness, but it isn't. That was the first crack in the dam. The next week, I bought a canvas. I bought oils. I didn't know if my hands still worked. They were stiff with arthritis and years of scrubbing dishes. But I painted. It was ugly at first. It was messy. But it was red. Bright, violent, beautiful red. I stopped cooking Sunday dinners. I told my children, "If you want to see me, let's go to a restaurant. I am retiring from the kitchen." They were shocked. They were annoyed. They pushed back. "Mom, are you sick? Mom, are you okay?" "I am better than okay," I told them. "I am finally awake." I started saying no to everything that drained me. No to the church committee. No to the neighbor who wanted me to watch her cat. No to listening to my friends complain about the same things they've complained about for 20 years without changing anything. And do you know what happened? The world didn't end. The sun still rose. My children learned to figure it out. My friends adjusted. I am 78 now, and I am like a bonsai tree that has finally been planted in the earth. I am growing wild. I travel alone now. I went to Italy last year. I sat in a piazza in Florence, drinking wine at 2 in the afternoon, watching the light hit the cathedral just like I wanted to when I was 20. I didn't paint it perfectly, but I painted it. I eat what I want. I wear bright colors, turquoise and tangerine, colors that Robert would have called garish. I talk to strangers. I have opinions, and I voice them. I have found a freedom in my obscurity. When you are an old woman, you become invisible to society. People look right through you. But that invisibility is a superpower. It means no one is watching. No one is judging. I can finally be the jagged rock. But I have to be honest with you. There is a bitterness to this honey, because I did it so late. I look at the calendar and I know the pages are running out. I have more yesterdays than tomorrows. I have finally found the key to the cage, only to realize the sun is setting. I cannot get those 60 years back. I cannot unclench the jaw of my 30s. I cannot unsilence the voice of my 40s. I gave away the prime of my life in exchange for being called a good woman. And let me tell you, that title is not worth the price of your soul. So, why am I telling you this? Why am I opening these old wounds? Because I see you. I see you in the coffee shop, typing away on a laptop, answering emails at midnight. I see you nodding politely when someone interrupts you. I see you apologizing for taking up space in the elevator. I see you exhausting yourself to be the perfect employee, the perfect partner, the perfect parent. I see you pruning your own branches so you don't overshadow anyone else. Please, listen to a woman who waited too long. You are not a vessel for others to pour their needs into. You are not the supporting character in everyone else's movie. You are the protagonist. Disappoint them. Please, I beg you. Disappoint them if it means staying true to yourself. If keeping the peace means starting a war inside your own body, then let there be war outside. Let there be friction. Friction creates heat. Heat creates fire. And you need that fire to keep you warm. Don't wait until the house is quiet. Don't wait until the diagnosis comes. Don't wait until you are 78 and looking at your hands, wondering whose life you just lived. Be difficult. Be complicated. Be selfish. Be real. Because the only thing worse than being disliked by others is looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person staring back. Take up space. Make the mess. Paint the picture. Live your life before it's just a memory of something you were planning to do.